Hello, everyone. Welcome to another edition of the Livin The Dream podcast. My name is Rishi Barran. I'm a course director at the Dan Patrick School of Sportscasting in Winter Park, Florida, part of Full Sail University. And we've had this podcast now. This is episode 11. And the reason that it has lasted so long is because we've got a lot of great students who have a lot of great stories to tell. In fact, graduates. And that's what this is all about, sharing not only what they're doing now, but the journey it took them to get there. And today, man, one of my favorites, a guy who is always high energy, a guy who has as big a heart as I know. His name is Chris Belcher, and he is an associate producer now at 24/7 Sports. Chris, I know you're super busy. Thanks for finding time for us.
Rishi, I always make time for you. Come on. Anytime I get a text from Rishi Barran, I have a huge smile on my face. So it's a pleasure. I've been following a little bit of the Livin The Dream podcast, so it's a pleasure to be on. I'm glad you asked.
Well, I'm gonna have to ask you for tips, Chris, because you've been doing podcasting a lot longer than me. And if you didn't notice in Chris's background, lots of wrestling gear. He is a big time wrestling fan and even has his own wrestling podcast. We'll talk about that in a little bit, and about his new promotion, which was only, I think, less than two months ago. So congratulations for that, Chris. That makes that smile a little extra big, doesn't it?
It does. It certainly does. The responsibilities are a little bit bigger, but the smile is also a little bigger. So it's certainly worth it.
All right. Well, this is the Livin The Dream podcast because we talk about the dreams, past, present, and future of our graduates. We always go with the big three questions. Where did the dream start? What's it like living the dream now? And what's the next dream you're chasing? But we got to start somewhere, Chris. So where did the dream start for you to get into this industry?
Man, you talk about a loaded question. Really, it started, my wife always tells me ever since she met me, we met in college in 2007, our first round of college. She tells me that my mind's like a steel trap and I have so many useless facts that I have to find a way to get them out. Well, that includes sports and music and a whole bunch of other things, wrestling included. So I always knew that my first go around with college, I moved to Nashville to play music. I had the dream of going on the road and playing in big time bands, and that fell apart for one reason or another. And I always thought, if that didn't work out, I want to get in the sports industry somehow. Like I have all this useless knowledge, as she tells me, and you need to get it out. So I needed to find a way to get it out. And the music industry, like I said, didn't work out for one reason or another. So I started venturing down the world of sports. And of course, as you said earlier, as people can see behind me, I'm a huge wrestling fan. So I was always ingrained in that, but I'm from Kentucky, so I love basketball and that kind of thing. So sports was always a huge part of my life. It was one of those things, and I think I've disclosed this to you before, Rishi. I'm from a small town in Eastern Kentucky where I didn't think that careers like this happened for people like me in small towns. I just didn't know the way to get there or anything like that. So when the Dan Patrick School of Sportscasting fell in my lap on a commercial, I was listening to a podcast, I said, this is it. I have to do it. And it's all online. I can't go to Florida. I can do it at home. This is great. And of course, everybody knows the name Dan Patrick. So that's really how my connection to the school started. But the dream, like I said, just started years of being a sports fan and getting aggravated at commentators for, hey, you're not covering my team right, or that's bad information or whatever. And my drive to, hey, I can fix that. I can do that with a little bit of hard work. Maybe I could get on and commentate or, host a show or what have you. And, we got into the school and the rest is history.
Well, now you've reached the point where people can get aggravated at you, Chris. So
that's right.
Congratulations.
Yes. I've earned that title and I will wear it proudly.
Yeah, no matter how good you are, and especially now, man, like there's more voices from more different places all over the world that can just instantly let you know how they feel. Even if you're really good, somebody's going to not like you. So that's all.
Sure, absolutely.
But I tell you what, a lot of people like you. You've been doing a lot of good work at 24/7 Sports and the Pipe Bomb podcast for wrestling. But let's kind of start at the beginning again and go back there. So, big time wrestling guy. I'm sure the fact that NXT was at Full Sail didn't hurt either in terms of your interest in the school. But how did being a wrestling fan as a young person influence your life overall?
Like you said, NXT was a huge part in my interest in the school, but being a wrestling fan influencing what I wanted to do. Wrestling is all about entertainment. And I'm not going to go down the rabbit hole of what people think about how fake wrestling is or whatever. I'm not going to go down that rabbit hole, but I will say it's entertainment and it sucked me in. I tell people that I came out of the womb watching wrestling because I feel like that I did. My dad raised me on watching wrestling, and it's one of those things that I always carried through me. My best memories as a child, honestly, is watching wrestling. The Monday Night Wars is what us as kids growing up lived for, flipping back and forth between Raw and Nitro and who was going to show up. And Hulk Hogan was a bad guy. And, our minds are blown as 10-year-olds. So it just stuck with me. It's something that I put away for a little while I was in college, but I picked right back up and it's like I never left. So I guess the long and short to answer your question is it's just something I get excited about. And it's something that I can invest in. A lot of people call it a male soap opera. And I fully agree. I think it is. It has comedy. It has drama. It has horror. It's a form of entertainment that I enjoy most. Sure, I like a movie or going to a concert or whatever, but you give me 3 hours of free time and what am I going to do? I'm going to pop on some old wrestling and I'm going to enjoy it.
As an instructor in this program, I love when I get people who watched wrestling because for you understand the art of entertainment and how to use your voice and animation. And that's a big thing in broadcasting. Now, other sports, other mediums don't necessarily go quite to the height that wrestling does, but I always thought it's easier to bring you back down a little bit than to kind of bring you up. So I think that's something that you had from day one in the first class that I taught you in. And it's something I think that's really a great thing for those who are interested in wrestling, even if they don't go into doing wrestling stuff. It's going to help you in broadcasting. Now, you're not the first and you won't be the last this is not the first dream that you've chased. Right. You talked about your music career, and not a lot of people make it to Nashville to chase the dream the way that you did. What was that experience like for you?
Honestly, just like being at Full Sail and just like working at 24/7 Sports, it was one of the coolest experiences I've ever had. I mean, I was blessed by the good Lord to be able to quit any full-time job that I had and go on the road and play music and make a living doing it for about a year, a little over a year or so. So I was able to, my only job was to go set up my drums and play music for 4 hours a night, tear those drums down, go stay in either a hotel or an Airbnb or something. And if we were in a town for a couple of days, enjoy the town and then drive to the next town. And how cool is that? My job was to go play drums and entertain people. So it was a dream that I had for a long time. And I knew the best place to do that and to make that dream any sort of reality, good, bad, or indifferent, was to move to Nashville. Where else are you going to play music? There's a bar on 10 bars on every street corner. Now, they used to say there's a bar on every corner, but now the place is just insane. But you can go literally play anywhere. There's live music for 8 hours an evening. On weekends, it goes almost 24 hours. And if you can't go find a place to play or meet some people to get together and play, you're just not doing it right. So I was able to meet some people. We were able to go on the road. And honestly, Rishi, it was awesome. I would go to the furthest point of the building and I would take a picture of my drum set and I would just look at it. Like, man, when did I ever think that I would be able to put my drum set in a building where people were going to come see us play. And it was cool. Now, I didn't play for any artist that probably you've ever heard of or anybody listening has ever heard of. But the point is I got to do it. I got to play a lot of different styles. I was telling somebody the other day that I think on a Friday night, I think I played at a marina and we played 50s rock. We were playing Elvis and, that Chuck Berry and all that kind of stuff. And then the next night I went to a warehouse an hour down the road and we played 90s grunge rock and Led Zeppelin. And so that was the kind of balance that I had to do. And ultimately, and I may be jumping ahead here, I apologize, but ultimately it ended because I couldn't do it with the people I wanted to do it with. A lot of the people that I'd gotten close with didn't share the same drive that I did. And this may sound like a cop out, but I got tired of having to say yes to everything. Playing drums and packing up those drums and playing in front of people wasn't as much fun as it was when I first started out. And I realized that when it got to that point, it was time to go do something else.
Well, you've certainly done that. So congratulations on chasing that dream and then chasing another one in due time. How does the feeling of playing in front of a live audience compare to what you do now in broadcasting? Are there similarities to that thrill?
I think in some ways, yes. You don't get the instant gratification, at least from my perspective as an associate producer, of instant reaction from a live person in front of you. Now, the way that we stream things on YouTube and different platforms with 24/7 Sports, we can see viewership numbers and we can see audience retention. And obviously, that you're doing well by, hey, we had 2,000 live viewers and we've had 20,000 cents and 500 likes on the video or what have you. So you see that there's just not that instant gratification from a behind the scenes perspective. So I guess the answer to your question is yes and no. It does compare, just a little bit different.
We're talking to Chris Belcher, associate producer at 24/7 Sports. He went from a musician to a sportscaster, but there was an in between there, Chris. And you talked about how it was great to, work a job you were passionate about, just go off and, play music. But eventually you did go into the kind of everyday man job. And then eventually you got to Full Sail. But that period of your life, what was that like?
Really difficult. As I said, music was my first dream. And as anybody knows, giving up on a dream is hard. And I lived it. And it was a hard decision. I was at peace with the decision for a while until the job that I left the performing industry for. It was still in the music industry. I won't get into much detail about that, but the CEO that I worked for, he and I had a falling out and my job there was no more, which happened to coincide with the week that I started Full Sail. So it was this extremely high that I'm so excited about. I knew that I wanted to take on the next venture and it was Full Sail. And at the same time, I was let go from this other job. So it was really just a hard balance of I'm giving up on this one dream to chase another, but I had this personal setback that I really don't know how I'm going to recover from. And this was all pre-global pandemic where we saw the rise of people being paid unemployment and those rates skyrocketed and you were able to make an honest living when you weren't able to work for a good reason. And I'm not going to get political or anything like that, but I say all that to say my unemployment came before all that. So it's not like that I was sitting on what I would normally make and be okay. I was worried about financial burdens at the same time of going to school and that kind of thing. Couple that with giving up on my first dream. So personally, I was out of whack there for a while. I really was. But I think in the right time, I got past a lot of the general courses of Full Sail. We started getting into some sports casting centric courses. And it really, I can't tell you how much it actually lifted my spirits to be able to start doing that. And that really bled over into my personal life. And I found a job that I held for almost 3 years until I found my current one. And while it wasn't exactly what I wanted to do, I met some great people and it was a great job. And it really, like I said, it helped me through until I got this one.
And you took that leap of faith to Full Sail. You mentioned hearing the ad. Why did you think that at that particular moment in your life, making the decision to try this was a good one?
It came at a crossroads. It really did. As I said, I enrolled in Full Sail before I was let go from the previous job. I knew that at that previous job, I knew that my days there were numbered. And that was because I knew that wasn't my end point. This was a really, really good job that I got the chance to travel the world, see London, see Paris, a lot of these places that I may never see. So I was willing to soak all that in and I was good at that job. But at the same time, I knew that wasn't my passion. I knew that I wanted to chase something else. And Rishi, I was listening to the Edge and Christian podcast that totally reeks of awesomeness that does not exist anymore. It's a wrestling podcast. And when Edge and Christian had their show on the WWE network, Gus Ramsey was one of the producers for that show on the WWE network. So I learned that after the fact, but the commercial for the Dan Patrick School of Sportscasting was on that podcast. And I listened to it and I was like, this is great. This would be such a great thing. And I kind of went and talked to my wife about it. And at first, we had decided it wasn't the right time for me to do that. It might not be a good idea, whatever. So I was like, okay, well, I'm kind of at a crossroads. I don't really know what else is going to happen. Don't know what I'm going to do. And then Rishi, probably a week later, the commercial came on again out of the blue. Didn't hear it any time in between those two sequences. It came on and I felt emotion. I probably had tears down my face. And I walked into my wife and I said, I feel like that this is where I'm being led. I feel like we need to take a chance on this, or this emotion wouldn't come over me by hearing a commercial for a school. I always said I never wanted to go back to school, but here I am. It's like, this is where I'm being led. This is the door that God is opening up for us. I feel like I got to walk through it. And I'm so glad that I did.
I believe in that too. You'll hear stuff, you'll see stuff, and it just something feels right.
Yep.
And I don't know what it is, Chris, but I think you were right about that.
Yeah.
And then you came to us as an online student and you mentioned your wife, you had her support to take on this, and again, like for a lot of people, it's kind of a pipe dream to go after this. What did her support mean to you as you went after this?
I couldn't have done it without her. And I say all that to say we had our first child while I was an online student. And anybody that knows anything about a first child, like, it's not easy. So she was able to not only go through that pregnancy while I was doing school. Obviously, we had the baby, and then it was still okay. We had the conversation of, do I take some time off? Full Sail was very like, hey, you can start, stop, that kind of thing. So we had the conversation. Do I take time off? And the answer was no. She said, we're going to see this through. There's no need to stop. Let's keep going. And she supported me every step of the way. And like I said, I couldn't have done it without her. I was doing homework on family vacation. I was doing homework until the wee hours of the night and then getting up at 4:30 to go to my day job. And I couldn't have done it without her being able to bear the load, not only of a child, but working all the hours that she did. I couldn't have done it without her support. There's no way.
Yeah, what a rock she was for you. And now for her to see it paying off for you, I'm sure that means a lot to her as well. You took this online experience and you did something with it. And you were in a pretty early stage of our online students where we were still kind of learning how we wanted to teach it as well. How did you take that online experience and make it your own?
I think when I enrolled at Full Sail, you guys hadn't even graduated a class yet, if I'm not mistaken.
Pretty sure
So,
you're right about that. Yeah.
so that was something for me. It was like, well, listen, just like with 24/7 sports, I'm able to be a part of something from the ground up. I'm able to really dive into this in its infancy, not and learn at the same time that you guys are, like you said. But as far as making it my own, school is not cheap. Let's be honest. School is not cheap. I'm doing this in 2.5 years. And a normal college degree is in 4 years, and you get the summers off and the holidays off and all this. So I have all these things stacked up in front of me. And the way that I made it my own, I've always been the kind of person who's like, if I'm going to do something, I'm going to do it. There's no need. If I'm going to spend all this money in this time, there's no reason to just halfway do it or not try, or, all that homework can wait, or, whatever. No, I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it right. And especially because this was a crossroads for me. This wasn't just me chasing after a job. This wasn't me just getting training to go do the next 9 to 5. This was getting ready for my next career move. And the weight of that was not lost on me. I've always been a big dreamer and had big aspirations to do something. So I'm going to take the bull by the horns, going to work as hard as I can, and I'm going to make something the best that it can be. And that was just my philosophy through the whole thing. And I'm not saying that that's my philosophy through my whole life. I'm not this, pound the pavement, always working kind of person, but I wanted to go out and I would never have known if I could succeed if I didn't try my hardest. Hello and welcome to the Super Bowl preview edition of the Full Sail Sports Podcast. I'm your host, Chris Belcher, alongside Arvin Narvaez. And Arvin, 2020 is behind us. The NFL season is complete. We've got one game left. I can't believe we actually made it. I had to bet on myself to see if this would actually work. I can't bet on myself if I'm not going to try my hardest.
And you did go all in. You pushed all those chips on the table. And Chris, most online students are like you, where they got a lot else going on. Most of them have a full-time job. Most of them, I don't know about most of them, but a lot of them have families. What advice do you have for them on how to manage your time and complete this program at a high level like you did?
Honestly, spend time on your Full Sail work doing something every day. It doesn't have to be this big 6-hour chunk of time or whatever, but I feel like that you need to have that online platform pulled up at least once a day. Check in, whether it's replying to a discussion question, whether it's messaging your professor if you have a question. You don't want to wait 2 or 3 days or wait to the last minute, because guess what? Professors have a life too. Make sure you get that stuff answered right away so that you're prepared. Always be thinking. It's always nice to go back and read those prompts, because in sports, I tell people all the time, sports is not a 9 to 5 gig. Sports doesn't stop. So if you're reading through those prompts and those questions for those assignments every week, if you're constantly refreshing your brain on what you need to be looking for, chances are, if you're watching sports, something's going to come to you that's going to trigger you. Always be taking notes. Always be thinking about it. I'm not saying sacrifice your family time or anything like that to be just solely focused, but we're creative types. We're always thinking anyway. So just get your brain working towards, hey, how can I apply this to my assignment? Oh, I liked what so-and-so did on the air. How can I apply that to this week's assignment, or what have you? All that to say, you want to dive into that, but at the same time, you want to make sure. I mentioned my wife earlier and how much of a rock she was. She wouldn't be that way if we didn't spend time together and we didn't make sure that we had family time, because yes, I did spend a lot of hours doing schoolwork, but at the same time, it's not worth it if you don't have your family. So you want to make sure to try to find that balance. The important thing is the professors are there for you. Get to know them. And a lot of times they're going to be really lenient on your everyday life. Just if you need extensions, if you need whatever, All I'm saying is don't stress yourself out so much. It's supposed to be fun. I said earlier that when we finally got to sportscasting program classes, that's when I really started having fun. It's supposed to be fun. Don't stress out about it.
Chris has a lot of fun hosting his Pipe Bomb Wrestling podcast, which he still does in addition to his 24/7 sports work. Chris, if I'm not mistaken, you did a podcast while you were in school too, and you did some writing. Those reps, those experiences, what did they do to help kind of enrich your skills to be better at the coursework and all that?
I said that I heard about Full Sail through a commercial on a podcast. Well, what really drove me to do my own podcast was listening to wrestling podcasts and listening to all these guys give their experiences and their stories. And while I may not have the experiences and the stories, I'm a fan. So I feel like I have a voice and I want to get that out. Doing these reps and continuing to produce these episodes gave me the confidence when I got to the School of Sportscasting, when these assignments came where I did have to perform and I did have to get excited, or when we had to do commentary or highlight reels or those kind of things. Having the experience of doing the podcast gave me the confidence even more to know, hey, I got this. I can do this. I've been doing this for a while. So that the podcast helps me keep my reps up, but at the same time gives me confidence in doing these other things because I've been doing it. I don't have a script when I have a podcast. Not saying that a script's a bad thing. I'm just saying that I'm able to go off the cuff if I need to. I'm able to improvise if something comes up. And it really helps you, or at least for me, in performing some of these assignments, not having to worry about, was I too loud? Was I excited enough? Did I inflect this word or that word? Like you said earlier, overexcitement versus not quite getting there. I feel like it really helped me balance that out.
I think it's helping you right now. I think that doing all these podcasts has made you a great guest because you're very entertaining. You have high energy. You're a great storyteller. You're not blabbering on and on. You're very clear with what you're saying, to the point, kind of when to wrap up your thoughts. So that's made you a great guest. I got to tell you, this has been one of the most fun ones that I've done because you're such a good guest here, Chris.
I appreciate that. I appreciate that.
I mean that. I do. What were some of your biggest takeaways from the program?
Oh my goodness. Number one, I've said it 3 times, 4 times already. The fun that I had. I had to pinch myself almost every day whenever I would pick up an assignment and it would say, cut a highlight on your favorite player and tell us why he's your favorite. I'm like, this is an assignment. I get graded for this. Like, that is to me, that was the coolest thing. So getting to do that and seeing the light at the end of the tunnel, ultimately seeing the reward, which we'll get to, but just the fun that I had was one of the biggest takeaways, and the connections that I made, you and Gus and Arvin and Zach and the guys that I was in class with, and connections that I know that I will take with me for the rest of my life. And now it's not just connections from a professor student, but it's an industry professional to an industry professional. And I know that I'm able to call on you guys if I need something, or you're more than willing to check out my work, what I'm doing, and give me feedback. So those lifelong connections, having fun, and just the overall experience of getting the knowledge, not only from you and from Gus, but from the guests that were brought in. I know a lot of these interviews and Skype sessions and Zoom sessions and all that, they take a lot of time. And when you have a full-time job and you have a family and you're trying to do school at the same time, the last thing that I wanted to do while I was in the program was to sit down and listen to a 2-hour Skype session of somebody that I might have heard their name once or twice. I'm like, man, I really don't want to do this. But by the end of it, was so glad that I did. I mean, I've seen sessions from Mike Tirico, and I've seen sessions from other people, and I'm like, man, I'm so glad I didn't miss out on that, because those resources are invaluable. So the connections, the resources, and just the having fun. And those are my biggest takeaways from the program.
Watching those sessions, you get something every time, don't you?
Yep.
You get something. You might not get the same thing. You might not get what you expect, but that's why, all of you should be lifelong learners and try to learn as much as you can. And Chris is right. You got to balance your life. You got to spend time with your family, your friends, everything that's important to you. But at the same time, when you manage your time well, you're able to get to a lot more. And we live in a society now where it's a lot easier to consume content while you're doing other things. You could put your earpods in and listen to one of these sessions while you're doing something else, right? So that's helpful. Well, we talked about your past. Now let's talk about your present. What's it like living the dream now?
Oh my goodness. I told you before that we started recording is my job is finally starting to feel like work. That's because for the first 6 to 7 months, it didn't feel like work. The same feeling that I got when I was learning this stuff at Full Sail, man, I can't believe I get to learn this. This is what I get to do for a project. Now I go to work and I'm like, are you kidding me? I get to look up stats and cut highlights on Alabama and Georgia football today. Like that's all I'm doing and I'm getting paid. It is something, as I said earlier, that a small town kid from Kentucky, I didn't ever think was possible. You watch those guys on television or hear them on the radio or whatever, like, man, wouldn't it be so cool? How in the world could I get to do something like that? Thank the good Lord. I'm in the thick of it and I'm having a blast doing it. I can't, every day is a new adventure, but it's great. I don't want to say that I look forward to because it's still work. It's still, I have to get up early and fight Nashville traffic, which if anybody knows anything about Nashville traffic, it is not pleasant during rush hour, but I got to fight all that. But then I get to work and, hey man, cut a highlight on this recruit, or, hey, Brian Kelly just got hired at LSU. Let's see what we can dig up. I'm seriously over the moon about getting to do what I do.
Well, I feel very happy that you're doing it, and you're doing it at a digital network too, which is the wave of the present and future, right?
Yep.
So
Yep.
You're not worried about being in some dinosaur job where
right.
It's going to go away. It's not going to go away. You guys will evolve like everyone else does.
Yep.
But what's it like being part of a digital network like that?
It's different. As I mentioned earlier, you don't get it. I don't feel like you get as much instant gratification in the digital world because you kind of have to wait. You're waiting for the audience retention numbers to come in. You're waiting for those likes and those kind of things. And sure, you can instantly produce those things as we all scroll through social media and we can, like pictures and all this other stuff. You can instantly do those things, but it's certainly different because we don't have a live audience, or we do have a studio, but we're not in that sort of environment. It's more about producing things online versus, hey, turn on ESPN, you're going to see the show that I produced, or, hey, check out, your local sports radio station. My show's going to be on there from 4 to 6 or whatever. It's not like that. So like you said, you can consume content in so many different ways. It's taken some getting used to, I'll be honest. But as we're getting into it, I'm starting to see the ways of learning what's successful and what's not, and what's going over well and what's not. And you're serving a lot of different things, a lot of different people in versus just a viewer. We at 24/7 Sports, we have a bunch of team sites that every major Power 5 program has a team site that goes through us, and we talk about their recruits and we talk about the news of their program and that kind of thing. So it's about getting news to those places just as much as it would be getting news to the audience.
We mentioned earlier that Chris just got a promotion to become an associate producer at 24/7 Sports. Congratulations, Chris. Well done.
Thank you.
Well done.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Those words sound great, but I don't know if a lot of people know what that means, especially at 27 Sports. What does an associate producer do where you work?
So back in November, I was hired as a production assistant. So basically, I came in and we cut video, and we were responsible for learning the basics, helping to make graphics, that sort of thing. Well, going forward I was one of the first 5 people hired with this streaming service of 24/7 sports. So we were responsible for building a database of videos we can use, graphics we can pull from whenever we start launching shows and different things like that. We have that kind of stuff in the can. So our job early on was to cut all those things. Well, now being promoted to an associate producer at the beginning of June, we are more tasked with coming up with ideas for shows, pitching in names of shows. Even I have the guy that sits next to me pitched the name of a show, and he named one of our shows that started on our YouTube channel this week. So we get to do different things like that, and we get to really be, I don't want to say in charge of content, but our voice is heard when it comes to creating the content. And then I have a show that's on our 24/7 sports YouTube channel every Tuesday and Thursday. It's called Wiltfong's Whip Around. It's by our director of recruiting, Steve Wiltfong. It's about a 15 to 20 minute show that is just about recruiting. I produce that show. I work with our content creator and our host, Steve. We come up with a game plan. I'm in charge of making sure we have all the elements together. I sit in the chair and I talk to the technical director. Hey, we need this video now. Hey, time for this graphic now, that kind of thing. So if you check that out, that airs typically around 6 p.m. Central Time on our YouTube channel. So that's my show. That's the one I'm in charge of. The guy I just mentioned that named a show, he has a show that he's in charge of Monday through Thursday at noon on our channel. So we're moving up and we're getting more responsibility. Our higher ups have given us the confidence that they believe in our ideas. They believe in what we bring to the table. So we feel like we can bring more. So I guess in a roundabout way to say, we have more freedom to be creative as associate producers. And that's a lot of fun. It gets my creative juices going.
What's the thrill of being the producer of a show with, you mentioned your recruiting guy and making those decisions on the fly?
It has its blessings and its curses. Blessings, knowing that I can go to that YouTube video later on and 2,000 people have watched that. Heck, that's more than almost I've ever had in my whole career of hosting a podcast. So seeing that, and of course that has everything to do with Steve and nothing to do with me. But having said that, knowing that, man, I had a hand in creating that. That's so cool, and those curses being, oh man, I called for the wrong video, or I was late and he's already moved on. Oh, that doesn't work. We're going to have to pull that down. I'm going to have to edit it because I made a wrong call. Or man, he went longer on this topic than I thought. And I don't have enough B-roll to cover. We're just going to have to sit here. And I put all that pressure on myself because that's my job. I didn't make the right call. Now I have to be the one to go fix it. So that's frustrating. But then at the same time, when you see the result and it works and it gets good feedback from people, it weighs out in the end.
Speaking of blessings and curses, you deal with some of the most passionate fans in all of sports. These college, especially college football fans, yes. I would say that, and especially when they're hoping that the next big shot is coming to their school. How do you handle the ups and downs of that passion?
Well, luckily, I am not a show host at this point, and they get the most flack. For example, it's fun. The main show that is on our 24/7 Sports YouTube channel, it's actually moved over to its own channel, is The Late Kick with Josh Pate. Josh has been with us for a long time. He is a mainstay in college football. I think he has 105,000 subscribers on his YouTube channel. So we host this show every 2 to 3 days a week. So Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Sundays during college football season. But thankfully, he gets more of the flack as far as on Twitter and the YouTube comments and that kind of thing that I do. But it's certainly interesting to see the ripple effect from Josh or from a couple of my higher ups when they do get the flack for, recently there was a big situation with a Miami recruit that there was some numbers skewed with his rating. Should he be a 5-star? Should he be a 4-star? And immediately when he committed to Miami, he went down to a 4-star. And some fans had thought that just because he went to Miami, we lowered him so that their recruiting rating would go down. Their numbers would look worse. When in actuality, that's not what happened. It was a glitch in the system because of a composite rating. That was nothing that we did intentionally. That was a glitch that happened, but we suffered for that. I mean, we saw that backlash on Twitter for 2 to 3 days because people thought that we took his star away because he went to Miami. That didn't happen, but like you said, college football fans are rabid and they love their program. And I even begin to talk about Alabama. So they love their programs. They'll do anything for them. It's certainly interesting to see that dynamic.
We might have a few Bama fans on our staff that'll be giving you angry phone calls, right?
Yeah. I imagine so. I imagine that is coming, but you know what? I will say this. I was not as big of a college football fan when I stepped into this job as I am now. I've gained so much respect for Nick Saban and that program, just the peek behind the curtain that I've been able to get. And I don't know if anybody caught the late kick with Josh Pate that was live from SEC Media Days yesterday, but his interview with Nick Saban was just phenomenal. That man cares about his players and his program more than anybody I've ever seen. So that's a quick plug, but that's where my respect for him and that program is now.
College football has changed a lot just since you started, whether it be the conference alignments or the name, image, likeness. How has all that changed how you guys do business?
It's given us something to talk about in the off season. We say that off season is not the right word to use because there is no off season. We talk about college football all year round, but conference realignment and name, image, likeness, it adds such a new layer to the game because we don't know where the game is headed. Some people would say that it's headed in such a bad direction because all these kids just want to come in and earn their money and doesn't matter how they perform, or they're just going to transfer from your school because this school is going to pay them more than that school, or conference realignment's all about media rights deals and, all those kind of things. All that to say, it doesn't necessarily change how we do things. It really just gives us more to talk about and a new layer to how recruiting is affected, or the transfer portal is affected, or the tenure of a coach, or that kind of thing. It gives us really a new layer of how the game is evolving.
That's Chris Belcher, associate producer for 24/7 Sports, and also podcast host for Pipe Bomb Wrestling. Chris, you talked about fun earlier. I know you love doing that. What does that bring to the table in your life right now, still being able to host that?
It's amazing. It really is. As I said earlier, if you give me 3 hours of free time, I'm going to sit and watch wrestling. I really am. And still being able to host this podcast and have family time and have my job that I love. It's so much fun. The guy that I do the podcast with, we always start our podcast and say, this is our favorite hour of the week. You provide the positive, I provide the negative. We'll meet somewhere in
the middle. Yeah.
No, I'm wearing an AEW t-shirt. Like, I'm not a total hater, but I am definitely not like the big fan. We just get to sit back, kick our feet up, and talk about wrestling. It's my favorite hobby. As much as I love basketball and football, and wrestling is my favorite hobby. So the chance to get the passion out and talk about your favorite hobby and have people listen and give you feedback, that's pretty cool to me. I'm blessed to be able to do what I do. And I don't make much money doing the podcast, but that's not what it's about. It's about being able to do it with your friends and have a good time. Share your opinion. If people listen, great. If they don't, hey, we're having fun.
I remember you brought on Full Sail graduate Trent Osborne for a show, and you messaged me, and I think Trent messaged me as well to tell me about that. Was that how much of a kind of full circle moment was that, working with someone else from this program on something that you care so much about?
It was so cool because Trent and I didn't do the program at the same time. I think he was ahead of me, and we connected through the School of Sportscasting Facebook group. And he had posted an article that he had written for bodyslam.net, which is a wrestling news site that carries news and rumors and all that kind of thing. And I read it. I commented, and I was like, man, this is fantastic. I love this. We connected in that way. We talked back and forth and found out what a huge wrestling fan, not only a huge wrestling fan, but a knowledgeable wrestling fan, how much knowledge he has about the business. And I immediately said, I've got to have you on the podcast. We have got to get you going. And he's a semi-regular guest on our podcast now. And it wouldn't have happened had we not been able to connect through that Facebook group. So all that to say, there were a lot more wrestling fans in the sportscasting program than I realized. And that was a cool part of the program for me. But connecting with Trent, we didn't even go to the program together, but it's cool. We talk very regularly.
There have been certain levels kind of achievement for our program, because we started with nothing, right? We built this from the ground up. One of the levels we've gotten to now that is different than from when you and Trent were in the program is we have a lot of people working in the sports broadcasting industry now. So we've got people all over that will either reach out to us looking for people to hire, or they want to make connections. How do you see that enhancing kind of the growth and the opportunities for students moving forward?
The industry is going nowhere. If I've learned anything from being in the industry, it might evolve and change to more digital or what have you, but it's going nowhere. So that gives me confidence to know that as long as the Dan Patrick School of Sportscasting is continuing to crank out good quality graduates, the industry will continue to be populated with fantastic workers, especially if they work hard at the program and get the most out of the program. There are so many things in the program that I learned that I'm applying to my job every single day that had I not gone through the program, I would not have known and could not apply it to my job today. So to say that, I think it's fantastic what the program is doing and how many people are being recognized not only for that hard work, but I hear a lot of people that I've talked with, hey, that Dan Patrick School of Sportscasting, they've got some good people. That's some good stuff. Hey, that's run by Gus Ramsey. I used to work with him at ESPN. They got a lot of great people over there. And it makes it attractive to hire people, especially if I'm to go to someone, hey, you've seen my work. This guy did the same thing. You need to look at hiring him. It really is a word of mouth industry. I didn't believe it as much until I got in it, but people really do take you at your word. If you throw out the Dan Patrick School of Sportscasting, as I said earlier, everybody knows the name Dan Patrick. You throw that out, people are going to turn their heads and pay attention.
Okay, next big question time. What's the next dream you're chasing as you continue to build your reputation in this industry?
Man, that is tough. I can't say that I haven't figured that one out yet, because I'm still in the honeymoon phase of enjoying what I'm doing. But as you can see, the wrestling stuff behind me and the wrestling podcast, it's not going anywhere anytime soon. I still feel like I want to get into the wrestling industry. I'm still chasing that as a next step, but that might evolve a little bit. I don't know that it'll be it may be broadcasting and wrestling, and it may not. I've had the opportunity since leaving Full Sail to do commentary at some indie wrestling events. My voice is on YouTube calling wrestling. That's really, really cool. But I've been able to do that, and that's so much fun. I've been able to ring announce. I got to do that a couple months ago. That was fun. but I also love chopping it up on the podcast. And I listen to a lot of wrestling podcasts and wrestling radio. It would be cool to do a radio show. So I still think I want to land in that sort of vein. I don't know exactly what that looks like yet, but I know that what I'm learning at 24/7 Sports is going to be a great takeaway at some point down the line to take and apply to whatever's next. Maybe that's wrestling. It might not be, but a lot of irons in the fire and a lot of places that I could go. Keeping my ears open, but again, still in the honeymoon phase. I'm loving what I'm doing now.
It's so cool to hear you say that it took about 6 months before you even felt like you were going to work. Because, I always tell people, I'm like, yeah, every day is not going to be great. There's going to be bad days too. It's just like any other job. You have your good days, your bad day. But the great days, there's nothing like the great days in this industry.
I'll tell you one quick story. One day when I walked into my office at 24/7 Sports, we are owned by CBS Interactive. So what that is, that's a parent company that is it's now Paramount, but is the parent company. We have Sportsline Betting, we have comicbook.com, we have popculture.com. All of us are on the same floor in the same building. Comicbook.com is a very entertainment driven platform. They cover wrestling. Well, there was one day that we were in there, I think it was back in February. AEW, All Elite Wrestling, was in town doing a show in Nashville. And we heard through the grapevine that Pop Culture was going to bring some guys in to interview them for some of their shows. They were going to bring them into the studio. So we were able to work some magic and we were able to get the Big Show on our show with Josh Pate. So I was like, okay, that's cool. Mark Henry was coming in. We wanted to get Mark, but he didn't have a lot of time. So we had a good 30-minute conversation with the Big Show that's on Josh's YouTube channel. So getting to see the Big Show walk into my building and those worlds interacting. There were a couple of other wrestlers there that I was really shocked to see. So you talk about the great days. It's a great day. When I walk into my office, the Big Show, Mark Henry, Adam Cole, some of those guys walk in and I'm like, are you kidding me? Like, I'm getting paid to do this. So those great days, there's some great days. And then there's some days like that.
That's great. I'm a Big Show guy. I think he's underrated. I don't think he gets enough love. He deserves more love. So more Big Show. So hype him up.
He said it. He said it in the lobby with us and just talked shop for a good half hour. He just told stories, and it was one of the coolest days I've ever had.
Sounds fun to me. You ready for the dream sequence here at the end? You want to do that?
Let's do it.
Okay, we were just talking wrestling. Dream wrestling tag team of people who are not a tag team together.
Shawn Michaels and AJ Styles.
Whoa. Wow. That's two generations coming together.
Two of my all-time favorites.
Nice. All right. Dream wrestling matchup, one-on-one.
Shawn Michaels versus Sting.
Oh, that's another kind of I mean, I guess they were going on at the same time, but kind of a little bit of interlap there. That's a good one. Yeah. I love your knowledge of the history of it, Chris.
Yeah.
You understand on many levels, current, way past, and kind of in between there. Great. Dream group of 3 other musicians to jam with.
Oh my gosh. I want to say Steven Tyler. I'm going to say Slash. And for fun, playing bass, I'm going to say Gene Simmons.
Love it. That's good stuff. I'm a big fan of all 3 of them. I read I read Slash's book too. I read Steven Tyler's book. I wouldn't say I read it. I listened to it, books on tape. After listening to Joe Perry's book on tape, Rocks. And it was interesting how different their perspectives were on some of the same stuff, which I thought was really good.
I've thought about that because I've read, I don't know if you have, I've read all 4 KISS members and their autobiographies.
No.
You talk about different perspectives. Oh my goodness. The difference in those, it's pretty wild.
And Slash is my favorite guitar player. I got to see him in Orlando at the Hard Rock, which is, in Universal basically, playing with Miles Kennedy and his band. And it was really cool to be in such a small, I've seen Guns N' Roses play. I had to wait 20 years to see Guns N' Roses play, but, or maybe 25, but I've seen them like 3 or 4 times since they got back together. But seeing Slash like that up close, like literally like 3 or 4 rows of people in front of me, that was quite an experience.
I saw Guns at the arena here in Nashville. Had no desire really to go, but my cousin dragged me along, and it was one of the most fantastic shows I've ever seen. But the Slash and Miles Kennedy show, that one's on my bucket list. That one I need to see.
Definitely go. He has a lot of fun with that. So
yeah,
great. All right, dream work road trip.
I tell you what, honestly, the one that I just did, me and a buddy drove 10 hours from Nashville straight to Dallas through the night, and we went to WrestleMania in Dallas. And being able to do that and get some work out of it, we recorded some podcasts. We're affiliated with bodyslam.net, so we got some content for them. I wouldn't say it was all work because obviously we were fans being there, but a little more work in that, and I'd call that a work road trip. It was so much fun. Anytime I can go to a big event like that, I'm all for it.
Was that the picture you sent me where it said WrestleMania in front of you in that table?
Potentially.
I was like, is he at WrestleMania doing this? That's
that one.
Cool,
okay. So the one that I sent you there, that was from New Orleans. So they have a fan access where you can actually put on the headset and call a match with one of their broadcasters. So that was really cool. That was one of the other WrestleManias that I got to go to.
All right. 3 more, I think we got. Dream Titans backfield. So you can pick anybody past Titans or other players in the league. You get 2 running backs in the backfield. Who do you want?
Eddie George and Chris Johnson.
Oh, C2K. Wow.
I love his breakaway speed. There's nobody that can that man. Nobody.
Yeah, when he was on, it was
his bruising running style. The man can catch the ball. You got to have a running back that can catch the ball. Derrick Henry has some problems with that, so I put him at a distant third. I'm going Eddie George and Chris Johnson.
All right, dream setup for watching games or wrestling. What do you want your setup to be if you're just sitting around watching them on a TV?
I need a good projection screen, fairly large, some nice surround sound, a refrigerator full of Mountain Dew, and a couple of my best friends. That's a good time for me. I'm as simple as that sounds, that works for me. I love being there at the venue watching it, but my dream setup would just be me and a couple buddies hanging out and watching.
Awesome. Last thing, dream wrestling move of your own. You may already have one. Who knows?
Oh man, I don't have one of those.
Give us one.
That's a stumper. I think if I had to pick one, it would probably be something similar to what Cody Rhodes does. His finisher is the crossroads. So he'll grab opponent from behind him, kind of tuck his head here, and then he'll flip over and kind of drop them on their head. I'm a small guy, so I've always been told you got to pick a move that you can do to anybody. You can't pick a move that you can pick somebody up because you're not going to pick up all the big guys. So some sort of move like that, or maybe something off the top rope, maybe some springboard, something that I can fly onto somebody. I'm a small guy, so anything like that, I think I can work with.
Well, that's our finishing move for tonight. Chris, it's been a real pleasure. I can't thank you enough for being with us.
Man, I can't tell you how happy I am to be able to do this with you. It was awesome getting to catch up. And I just hope that anybody that's watching and listening can take something from what I've said. And if you forget anything else, go check out 24/7 Sports YouTube channel.
Sounds like a good plan. I really want to thank Chris Belcher for taking the time to be with us tonight. He's been an outstanding guest. We will have episode number 12 coming up soon, TBA, on who that's going to be with. But I always enjoy doing this. So For the rest of you, keep on living the dream.